Huntingdonshire District Council Development Management Committee meeting. I would like to make you all aware that this meeting is being live streamed by the Council's YouTube channel. Please ensure that any mobile phones are switched to silent. So welcome to those who are watching at home. I would also like to outline some housekeeping arrangements. If you wish to speak, please do so to myself, indicate to myself. To enable your microphone, please press the middle button that will turn green. And the microphone will light up red at the top to indicate that this has happened. Please press the middle button when you have finished speaking, as it is particularly important that all members use their microphones so that the audio can be picked up through the live stream. In the event of a fire alarm sounding in the middle of a meeting, please stand and follow the meeting administrator to the meeting evacuation point outside of the building. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillors Niche and Goulson.
Thank you. Councillor Sanderson?
Councillor Tevlin is running slightly late, she said. She should be with us very shortly.
Thank you for letting us know. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is item 1, which is the minutes. We need to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of September 2025. Is everyone agreed that this is a correct record? Thank you. We will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is number 2, members' interests. Do we have any councillors that wish to declare an interest in any of the items that we have on the agenda today? Councillor Dew.
Thank you, Chair. I'm advised by our legal team that as I took part as a ward member last time, because you recall I was ill and wanted to speak as a ward member, I've fettered my prejudice effectively and can't speak today. So although I'm not happy with that advice, I accept that it's given me in good faith and right and proper, so I'll be withdrawing from that item on the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other councillors that wish to declare an interest? Okay, so I will declare an interest in item 4A as the ward member, and I intend to step out of the room for this particular item. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. Before we do that, okay, I'll just give them a second. Before we move on to the next item, it has been recommended by officers for the members to inform the members that in receipt of additional information that arrived on Friday late afternoon for item, we received extra information for item 4A on the agenda. And to allow officers time to consider its content, that the application is not to be determined this evening. Do I have someone that would like to propose that?
Could I raise a question?
Okay, thank you. And a seconder?
Could I raise a question prior to us proceeding to a vote on this?
So yes, we do need to have a vote on this, yeah.
He wants to ask a question.
Oh, sorry, what's your question?
Just conscious this is the second meeting in a row that we've had last minute legal correspondence on this item, and it's a second meeting in a row being proposed for deferral, or subject to the proposal on the table being seconded. I just wonder if it's in order to seek a little further clarity from officers on the I suppose on the timeline and the necessity for this. For example, is it? Well, perhaps tackle that, and I'll follow up if it's appropriate.
I will bring in our senior planning officer, Lewis Tomlinson.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. So, last month the application was withdrawn from the agenda because a letter was received on the morning of Planning Committee. That letter raised some concerns with the officer report. The officers invited in additional information from the applicant to address those concerns, which was then incorporated into the report you see tonight. Friday afternoon, we received another letter. So these are letters received from Richard Buxton Solicitors on behalf of Hemmingford Parish Council. And this letter is concerning the certificate of lawful existing development. So that's also referred in the report, and that's in relation to the tracks. The letter is requesting the council to revoke the decision on the CLEDs. So that raises kind of a set of evidence to be considered. So in terms of officers to give it kind of due consideration, we're recommending to withdraw it from the agenda tonight.
Thank you. The second last minute letter then, so the one prior to this meeting, is that raising concerns about something that is newly in the public domain then, that couldn't have been picked up earlier than the end of Friday, or if it was about the certificate that's been in the public domain for a couple of months now, hasn't it?
So in terms of timeline, the decision on the CLEDs was issued on the 4th of September. So that was prior to the publishing of the agenda for the September committee. So it's about roughly over 6 weeks ago.
Okay, if you'll forgive me a final time, Chair. I mean, I'm sure it's
That's fine.
well, it's certainly frustrating for us as members to come to a meeting expecting to engage with the decision-making process, which I think just about everyone in the district wants to be happening as quickly as possible with respect to planning decisions. I'm sure it's frustrating for members of the public who possibly even for a second time in a row have come to hear and potentially speak on an item for that to be deferred again. I just wonder if there's an appropriate way of us relaying a request to the parish council that perhaps prior to the third meeting, should there be any additional correspondence they wish to make to us, they do it in good time and not at the 11th hour that I'm sure completely understandably prevents us being able to proceed with a decision without having opportunity to review it. And while I have the microphone, Chair, I am very happy to second Councillor Dew's proposal on the table because in the circumstance I don't think we have any alternative, but would be nice if the parish council could not force this for a third time.
Can I raise a point? Is it the parish council who put the late papers in? I thought it was the applicant.
So to be clear, so both times it's been a letter received from Richard Buxton Solicitors on behalf of Hemmingford Abbots Parish Council. So the only additional information received from the applicant was in response to that first letter.
I'm wrong there. I stand corrected, Lewis.
Thank you. And that message will be relayed back to the parish council. So therefore, I have a proposer and a seconder that that the item 4A on the agenda will be deferred until next month. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
Any against? That has been passed. Okay, so before we move on, I would just like to introduce Just to say that we're being joined tonight by Athida, who is our external advisor barrister to support our internal legal services, and he will be up here with us today. So that moves us on to our next item, which is 3A on the agenda, which is an outline application for Houghton and Witton, which our planning officer, James Croucher, will present to us today.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. Just to note, we're joined this evening by Michelle Bolger online, who is the Council's landscape consultant. So this is an application for up to 120 dwellings to the south of the A1123 Houghton Road on the eastern edge of the parish of Houghton and Witton and to the west of the town of St Ives. This plan shows the boundaries of the respective parishes in the immediate locality. Existing residential development is located to the north at Garner Drive, to the east at the Spires, formerly part of the golf course. Houghton Grange Phase 1 is currently being developed by Shelbourne Estates to the west. The site is accessed by a main pedestrian and vehicular route known as Edith Coote Drive, directly from Houghton Road, opposite Garner Drive. This already serves the Houghton Grange development. The Thicket footpath is located to the south of the site, beyond which is the River Greatouse floodplain and the settlement of Hemmington Abbots and Hemmingford Grey. This aerial image shows the extent of the adjacent residential developments. There are a number of listed buildings nearby. The southwestern part of the site is located within the Houghton Witton Conservation Area. The St Ives and Hemmingford's conservation areas are located adjacent to the site boundary to the south and to the southeast. Part of the application site to the south of Houghton Grange is a county wildlife site, and there's a public right-of-way which crosses the southwestern section of the site. There are tree preservation orders affecting a group of trees within the centre of the site and variously on the site's edges. The application has been made in outline form with all matters reserved for the erection of up to 120 homes with public open space, landscaping, play areas, surface water attenuation, roads, car parking, pedestrian and cycle routes and associated works. The site forms part of the St Ives West allocation at Local Plan Policy SI1, which provides for approximately 400 homes. As noted in the report, there is a 10% tolerance at Local Plan Paragraph D8 in respect of residential capacity. 305 homes have already been approved and the majority of these have already been constructed. The current application will result in the total number of dwellings being within the local plan's tolerances and will complete the wider site allocation. The parameter plan shown here illustrates the background context and key elements of the development for approval. It shows the main site constraints, which include the water mains and foul water routes with their associated easements, the existing Houghton Grange Phase 1 master plan, and the consented Suds Pond, vehicular access, existing and consented cycle and pedestrian routes, and retained trees. It illustrates a developable area of the site for residential use, alongside seeking an in-principle approval for a number of detailed elements that would inform future site layout, including open space and trees, pedestrian and cycle routes, plus building heights and densities. As shown, the width of the gap between the edge of the proposed built development and the Howe access road varies in width. At the northern end, it's approximately 145 metres wide, reducing to between 115 and 131 metres wide in the centre, and between 136 and 165 metres wide towards the southeast. The illustrative master plan is shown here, noting this is purely for indicative purposes, showing how the site could accommodate up to 120 dwellings. As noted within the report, the Council's Urban Design Officer has confirmed that the general layout could be made acceptable at future reserve matters application stage. The St Ives West allocation calls for approximately 23 hectares of on-site green space. The supporting text of the policy sets out that the southern part of the allocation should comprise a substantial area of publicly accessible green space to reinforce a strategic green corridor along the river. This application will deliver 16.8 hectares of strategic green space, meaning that in total, over 26 hectares of green space will be provided across the wider allocation, exceeding the 23 hectare requirement of Policy SI1. The top right plan of this slide shows the indicative illustration taken from the adopted local plan of how the allocation could be delivered. As confirmed in the officer report, if permission is granted, the area of strategic green land will be offered for transfer to the District Council. This piece of land provides the link between Burman Park, the Howe and Thicket Wood, which are already in HDC control. This land is a significant benefit to the scheme and part of a wider strategic aim of the Council. As set out at paragraph 3.9 of the officer report, there are a number of policies within the Hooton and Witton Neighbourhood Plan that are considered to have been superseded by the adopted local plan's SI1 site allocation. Members, as you are aware, we are in tilted balance, and this site is also allocated for development in the adopted local plan. As the report sets out, site allocation SI1 is afforded significant weight in the determination of this planning application. A number of applications have been received in relation to these proposals from both residents and town and parish councils. One of the key objections relates to landscaping concerns. Hooton and Witton Parish Council has appointed its own landscape advisor, whose report has been appended in your updates. The council has therefore engaged an independent landscape consultant who has provided advice, which has also been appended. The council's consultant has confirmed that the applicant's LVA provides a fair assessment of landscape and visual effects. On this basis, officers consider the submitted LVA is acceptable and that the visual and landscape impacts of the proposed development are not considered to be significantly adverse. Officers consider that a clear sense of separation would be maintained between the developments at Hooton Grange and the Spires in accordance with the SI1 site allocation. A number of objections have also been received in relation to highway matters, in particular congestion along the A1123 Hooton Road. Trips generated from this site have been reviewed by the local highway authority, who also modelled the strategic roads impacts of sites allocated in the local plan. The local highway authority has raised no objections to the proposed development, subject to conditions. Objections have also been raised in relation to flooding and drainage. The majority of the site is located within an area of the lowest risk of flooding, flood zone 1, and is therefore acceptable in principle. The lead local flood authority has confirmed it has no objections. A number of comments have raised concerns with regard to the density of development. The submitted information demonstrates that, based on 120 dwellings, an average density will be 31.4 dwellings per hectare. A detailed appraisal has been undertaken by the Council's Urban Design Officer, as per paragraphs 782 to 788 of the Officer Report, which concludes that proposal would not constitute overdevelopment and does reflect an appropriate density that has regard to wider character and adjacent developments. St Ives West is a large-scale major development, and as such the proposals are liable for Section 106 contributions in addition to Community Infrastructure Levy. The range of contributions is summarised at paragraph 7.320 of the report and are shown on this slide. There would also be sewer receipts estimated at £1.1 million, and as Hooton and Witton Parish Council has an adopted neighbourhood plan, 25% of those sewer receipts will go to the Parish Council, approximately £270,000. Following a query raised at the Section 106 Advisory Committee meeting, the thicket path to the south of the site is on registered land, as confirmed by the County Council's Definitive Maps Officer. Over £1.5 million has been requested by the County Council towards primary school education. The entirety of the St Ives West allocation was forecast to generate the need for an additional one form of entry of primary school provision. As they have come forward, individual developments have been expected to contribute towards the cost of this additional capacity based on the size of their scheme. Thorndown Primary School is the catchment school for St Ives West, as shown on this slide, with the application site highlighted in yellow. An expansion project came forward in advance of funding from developer contributions, as agreed back in 2012, to allow the infrastructure to be put in place to minimise the impact of developments. So some photographs here, members, which I won't explain to you in detail, as I'm sure you're all familiar with the site, but these are photos taken along Hooton Road looking south, looking west. View out from Garner Drive looking south, with this signalised junction already in place. Looking south and west as you enter the site. Looking north from Edith Coote Drive towards Sleep Meadows. Some of the existing frontage planting along Hooton Road. A view from the corner of Plot 12 at the Howe development looking west across the application site. From the southeast corner of the site, where a pedestrian link is shown on the perimeter plan to connect into the thicket, the view is looking north. Edith Coote Drive from the Shelbourne development, which is Hooton Grange Phase 1. The view down what will be the Woodland Walk secured under the Phase 1 development. and views from within the Phase 1 development, where the parameter plan shows pedestrian links into the Woodland Walk and wider development. Determination of this application must be made in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. As the Council is unable to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, the presumption in favour of sustainable development is applied for decision taking in accordance with paragraph 11D and footnote 8 of the NPPF in relation to applications involving the provision of housing. This is generally referred to as the tilted balance. While no 5-year housing land supply can be demonstrated, the local plan policies concerned with the supply and location of housing are considered to be out of date and can no longer be afforded full weight in the determination of planning applications. Site allocation SI1 can, however, still be afforded significant weight. A balancing exercise must be carried out to determine whether any adverse impacts of granting permission will significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies of the NPPF taken as a whole. In terms then of the social dimension of sustainable development, the site appears to have no significant constraints and is deliverable. It would also increase the supply of housing, contributing up to 120 homes towards the housing supply on an allocated site. 40% of the homes would be affordable. In terms of the economic dimension, the proposal will contribute towards job creation during the construction phase and in the longer term through the additional population. And then in terms of the environmental dimension, the proposed development offers potential for the incorporation of energy efficiency measures and for the delivery of net gain in biodiversity. The scheme would also deliver a significant extension to the publicly accessible Burman Park, completing the country park. Financial contributions will be secured to support local infrastructure. There would be less than substantial harm to 2 conservation areas, a Grade 2 listed building and its curtilage listed gate lodge, with the harm in each case being at the lower end of the scale. Substantial harm has been identified to 1 non-designated heritage asset, a ridge and furrow, which must be taken into account when applying a balanced judgment. Although considerable importance and weight must be given to the statutory duties under the Planning Listed Buildings and Conservation Areas Act of 1990, when applying Section 16 of the NPPF, the heritage harm here both individually and cumulatively will be outweighed by the public benefits as set out within the report. The visual and landscape impacts of the proposed development are not considered to be significantly adverse, and it's considered that a clear sense of separation will be maintained between the developments at Hooton Grange and the Spires. The proposed development is considered, therefore, to be in accordance with policy SI1 of the adopted local plan, and applying NPPF paragraph 11, the identified harm would not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the identified benefits when assessed against the NPPF when taken as a whole. Having assessed all 3 objectives of sustainable development, it is therefore considered the collective material benefits of the proposed development firmly outweigh the identified harm. Applying Section 38(6) of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act of 2004, the proposed development is considered to be in accordance with the development plan, with no material considerations indicating that permission should be refused. It is therefore recommended that members delegate powers to approve the application in line with the recommendation, subject to conditions and the completion of a Section 106 agreement, as set out at Section 4 on page 12 of your report pack. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we now move on to the next part of our meeting, where we have 4 speakers for this particular application. Our first speaker is Lisa Foster, who is speaking for Houghton and Witton Parish Council. Welcome. You have 3 minutes in which to address the committee. If you press the middle button, and then it should light up green, and then your microphone should light up red at the top.
Great, thank you. Councillors, I'm Lisa Foster. I was just introduced. I've acted for the Parish Council for a long time in connection with this application. Thank you for letting me address you this evening. The current proposals conflict with the allocation and they conflict with the neighbourhood plan. And the harm that results is urbanisation to the village, visual impact harm to an absolutely beautiful landscape, which I'm sure all of you know, and coalescence of the village with St. Ives. Harms you've seen the slide from your planning colleagues. Harms of that nature, of the degree that we say will happen, can disengage this housing land supply tilted balance, where the adverse impacts would demonstrably, significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. And all of this seems like a slightly arid conversation because my clients support the development on this site. They have long supported it. The first thing they said to me when they called me is, we support this development, but we've been unable to engage with Homes England to work out a scheme that both parties can live with. And so we sought to engage with Home England with letters, a couple of letters in February 2022. That's how long we've been at this, 2023. But in our client's view, with my observations, Homes England has steadfastly refused any purposeful engagement. Yes, they've had meetings, but all of you are grown-ups. You don't go to a meeting and then don't follow up. If you go to a meeting with an open heart and a keen objective to work out a solution, you follow up and you work out a way to sit down and find a solution for this application, which has been stalled for years. And my message to you, councillors, today, it's now time for you to take control of this application and to move things forward. And you think about that for a moment. You've got a parish council willing to support the development in its parish, hard up against a developer that's steadfastly not engaging. So the problem is there's a lack of compliance with the policy criteria, which was a master plan from the start. And the officer's report does attempt to engage with the lack of a master plan. But if you read the wording in the officer's report, it says the policy is also supported by an indicative illustration designed to guide the development. The problem is that indicative illustration isn't being followed. So there's no master plan and there's a lack of compliance with the indicative illustration. And there's two main things that are, if you will, the breach of the indicative illustration. And you saw it on that slide a few minutes ago, that absolutely beautiful approach into Houghton Grange phase 1. I mean, I would imagine most of you are familiar with that. Openness.
Can I just inform you, you've had your 3 minutes, so could you wind?
I will.
Thank you.
That openness will be lost with the development pulled too far forward toward the road. The second, thank you for just giving me a half a second. This is so important to my clients. The second parameter on that indicative plan is also the separation gap that is breached. And so the justification for not having the master
Thank you.
plan
I need to
doesn't
stop
hold up.
you there.
Okay.
Are there any, so thank you very much. Are there any questions that councillors have of this particular speaker? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for coming to see us this evening. Is appreciated. So I really have two questions. You mentioned that, I think your words were, this means you can disengage from a tilted balance. I'm not sure how we could possibly do that, so perhaps you could clarify. Second question I have is, and this seems to be the crux of the concern here, is the coalescence with St Ives. I know Houghton and I know St Ives, and they're both lovely places. I'm not quite clear why there is such a resistance to the perception that you'll be joined, the village will be joined with St Ives. That may be a less technical planning question, but perhaps one you could clarify for us. Thank you.
Is it working? Yeah. So talking about this disengage the tilted balance, the tilted balance is not a trump card. It doesn't say nothing else matters. The tilted balance says where there is a housing land supply, unless the harms significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits, and the tilted balance is engaged. In this case, the view of my clients, supported by expert evidence and supported by the town council, is that the harms do significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. I saw the slide, Councillor Saunderson. I'm sorry, I can't quite. There's a lot of benefits with this scheme. Those benefits are not going to fall away. If Homes England sits down with my client and works out a scheme, you'll get the education funding, you'll get the infrastructure funding, you'll get the housing. You know, I actually thought about writing to Angela Rayner about this application because I think it's unacceptable that Homes England comes into a community and won't engage with the parish council to say, let's get this done. Let's find a number you're happy with, we're happy with, but that's not happened. And so the problem is really,
Could I just ask you to just clarify the question, answer the question, please?
okay, well,
Thank you.
I felt I have answered it. So the problem is the demonstrably insignificant harm can disengage the tilted balance. You do not have to say, oh, our hands are tied. We can only vote for approval where we find that there's significant and demonstrable harm.
Thank you. My second question.
Can you repeat it, please? I'm sorry.
It was more a case of you mentioned your coalescence with St Ives.
The coalescence, why we're worried about it.
Yes, yeah.
When you leave St. Ives and you're heading out on the B1123, you're very aware when you're in St. Ives. You read it as the town, okay? When you approach the Houghton and Whiten development, Phase 1, this really beautiful curved driveway that I mentioned a few minutes ago, you are aware you're no longer in the town. You have a distinct reading that the landscape is a different place. You're not in the town anymore. You're not part of the town. And it's I mentioned the parameters plan. The parameters plan in the local plan allocation, SI1, brought the housing back so that you continue to read rural setting as opposed to town setting.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions for this particular speaker? Councillor Wakeford.
Sorry, just catch the names.
Thank you. The basic question, I suppose, I just wonder if it's helpful to be clear about it is whether there is, I suppose, recognition from the parish council. I appreciate this is faintly unusual speaking through legal representation as opposed to the council itself, but whether the council accepts that we are being invited to make a decision on the application in front of us this evening, as opposed to a sort of a hypothetical different application that they might be wishing were here.
I'm trying to appeal to your common sense that there is a solution to resolve my client's concerns that are not going to lead to the courts interfering with your decision-making process. Because the parish council has determined it will take legal proceedings on what we say is an unlawful interpretation of the requirements in the policy. And so the purpose of me attending tonight is to try to find a way forward, which may be a motion to defer the application, push heads together, or whatever the phrase is, and see if there's a way that Homes England and the parish council can sit down together and come back to you with a supported scheme. Otherwise, I fear, and I do think it's very bad planning that cases end up before the court, but I think that's the way this is going at the moment. And I'm sorry to say that. I always tell my clients, find a way forward rather than litigating. But if they need court intervention, that would be an option open to them.
Thank you, Chair. I think that was a yes, but that's helpful, and that's me done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? So thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for the chance to speak to you.
That's okay. We will move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Councillor Nick Wells, who will be representing St Ives Town Council. Welcome, Councillor Wells. And when you're ready, you can press the middle button and you have 3 minutes in which to address the committee.
So good evening, councillors, officers and members of the public. I'm here tonight in my role as Chair of St Ives Town Council Planning Committee to express the Town Council's support for Houghton and Witton Parish Council's objection to the decision made at the Development Management Committee meeting in July 2025. And I note that we haven't actually touched on that particular aspect of the objections to the development yet, and I would have deferred to Houghton and Witton on this one, but as I've been given the opportunity to speak first, obviously I will do so. So in May 2025, you had, and I spoke previously on this, that the Town Council recommended objection to the application unanimously as the Planning Committee, noting that the local plan had allocated 88 homes, plus or minus 10%, as it understood it to be. The application plan is also now for 120 homes, and the committee strongly felt that that figure of 88 or less would be far more appropriate for the area, noting the density that we're now looking at. We also reflected the local residents' view on the application, noticing that many objections have been received from the public. The committee expressed concerns on ground of overdevelopment and the significant strain on local infrastructure and resources. Traffic and congestion issues are a major concern for the council and local residents. Previous speaker touched on the A1123 west of St Ives, which is already a congested road. The existing figures, are already very high, and obviously that will increase further with a very high level of development in terms of intensity. The proposed density of 31.4 dph for the development is really not suitable for the edge of a town, which cannot sustain a central town density. So touching on the aspect, well, we have actually come back this evening. The Town Council's understanding was that the Development Management Committee was misled in respect to the point 3 in the agenda summary paper, in that they may have incorrectly thought that the allocation of 120 homes could be refused at a later stage, at the reserved matter stage, which, as we understand, is not the case. This is a concern both for this proposed development and for any future development, if should a misunderstanding occur. We have the potential for other large-scale developments on the borders of St Ives, which we're very concerned about, obviously not having come to planning yet, but we are concerned about those. So we asked the committee to review the previous decision for Houghton Grange Phase 2 in light of the allocation rules, and also with consideration to the impact of the development this density will have on the already congested traffic situation on the 1123 west of St Ives. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for this particular speaker? There are no questions, so Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. I think we hear concerns about density, and I think numbers linked to the density. I just wonder if it's helpful to invite you to unpack, I suppose, the council's position on the density in light of what local plan SI1 says about the quantum of housing. I suppose it would be helpful to understand the argument, not just, I suppose, as to suggesting to us that the SI1 shouldn't apply, but also if it did apply, what the remaining concerns might be around density from the Town Council.
Thank you, Councillor Wakeford. You'll have to excuse me not being as au fait with SI1 as I'd like to be, and I'm sure other speakers maybe more so, but just to touch on the actual numbers, we understand that the DPH of 31.4 is way in excess of obviously Houghton Grange Phase 1. It's also well in excess of the Spires Estate in St Ives, and it seems to me that a development which is not an in-town development, i.e. between St Ives and Houghton, to have a high density of properties, which presumably some of which were apartments, doesn't feel to be a particularly appropriate way to develop in this particular location. I hope that answers your question somewhat, if not completely. Thank you.
No, that's helpful. Thank you. I suppose I was keen to give an opportunity to speak to the extent to which the council's position isn't merely that it disliked the figure in the policy, but also to speak to density as separate to that as well. But others, as you say, may touch on that as well. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wakeford. Are there any other questions for this particular speaker? There are no other questions, so thank you very much for joining us this evening, Councillor Wells. We'll move on to our next speaker, who is Councillor David Keane, who is the County Councillor for this particular area. Welcome, and when you're ready, you have 3 minutes in which to address the committee. You can press the middle button and the top should turn red and you can address them. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair members, here we are again. The same application, the same number of houses, the same site, but what has changed? It's not the evidence, it's the resolve of the surrounding communities. Houghton and Witton and the neighbouring parishes and towns have made their case clearly and professionally. They've brought forward legal, planning, landscape expertise of the highest calibre, the kind any of us would rely on. The officer's recommendation is well presented and professionally made, but it sits against an even stronger and more convincing case, grounded in policy, planning, case law and principle. The parish's conclusion is consistent and compelling. 120 houses here would cause the very harm our policies were written to prevent: coalescence of settlements, loss of separation, and erosion of local identity. Like you, I represent my ward, but I also champion the integrity of our district. I sit here not as an advocate for one side, but in a mediating role between the applicant's position and the evidence presented by the parish. Having weighed both, I found the local case persuasive, factually, legally, and morally. The parish and its advisors have shown this proposal breaches the design-led and plan-led approach required for this site, that up to 120 houses interpretation, the 10% flexibility rule have been misapplied, that the tilted balance doesn't have to apply, that the economic benefits are weak, and the resulting planning harm is demonstrably and clear. They are ready to stand by that position and test it if necessary, because they believe it is right. But rejecting this scheme does not mean confrontation or costs. It actually means clarity. Either decision tonight will test the strength of both arguments, but I believe the more constructive, lawful, and ultimately cheaper path is to allow a revised application that aligns with both the policy and the community expectation. So the question tonight is not whether development should happen. As it's been said, everybody agrees. The question is whether 120 dwellings reflects the intention of our policies, or whether a smaller, more proportionate number, around 88, better fulfills that plan-led vision for the site. There is clear precedent and strength behind that view, and sometimes, as representatives of our communities, the only way to clarify the balance between interpretation and intent is to test it. So in my judgment, having been immersed in this planning decision and having felt the weight of public opinion, I must conclude that it's in the financial interest of the District Council and of local democracy to amend refusal. Doing so will save the public purse from unnecessary costs, enable the right scheme to be delivered, and more quickly ensure that what's built is truly complements the environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any questions for this particular speaker? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, David. Very well spoken as always, but I'm going to have to just query something you said at the end there. You mentioned public costs. How are you suggesting that there will be a cost to the public purse then, should we, if we were minded to approve this application this evening?
So I think from the previous speakers, obviously the parish, and from my experience, the parish is very passionate about their case, and they've done a lot of work on that. So if you approve it, obviously there's going to be, I should imagine, another step to this. So in a way, as we said, the parish wants to work with the applicant. They believe 88 homes is the right number. And so why can't we refuse this and get the applicant to come back with that proposal?
If I may, Chair, because that proposal that you're suggesting is not in front of us this evening, I'm afraid we can only consider what's here. You're saying an extra step. I think I have some idea what you mean by that, but it doesn't seem like a particularly constructive way, perhaps. I'm not having a go at you personally. You're representing the views of residents, and you do it very well, but it doesn't seem perhaps an entirely healthy way forward that's being suggested there. Thank you.
Can I just say on that point, as I said in the speech, we've got two views here. Both are very well presented. It's obviously up for you to decide which one it is, but obviously the parish council is going to take forward if it's not refused. So that's, I think, the point I'm making.
Okay, are there any other questions or clarification on this for this particular speaker? There are no other questions, so thank you very much for joining us this evening, Councillor Keane. Our last speaker for this particular application is Jim Strike, who is the agent. I'm afraid that the parish only gets 3 minutes, and you had Lisa Foster down as being your speaker. Oh. We'll just take a moment to have a look. Okay, thank you for that. We'll have to give our apologies, but yes, you are welcome to speak. Sorry, I'll have to give my apologies. You weren't on my list, but thank you very much for bearing with us. Welcome for coming this evening, and you have 3 minutes in which to address the committee. When you're ready, you can press the middle button and the top will light up red, and that means that you're ready. So, welcome.
Apology accepted, and good evening. Members of the DMC, I'm truly sorry you're faced with having to review this application again, and especially when it shouldn't have needed to come to you as a contested application in the first place. Why do I say this? Well, the lengthy reports, extensive documentation make this application appear complex and difficult. In reality, it's really quite straightforward and could easily be resolved. The key question is whether approving this application causes significant planning harm, and whether existing planning policies are in place and being properly applied to prevent it. It's been suggested that the neighbourhood plan conflicts with the local plan and therefore carries no weight. This is categorically untrue. Both plans share the same goal, preventing coalescence. They even identify the same area where it must not occur. The neighbourhood plan remains valid and active. Any perceived conflict arises from a failure to properly implement the local plan policies, not from the policies themselves. Some argue that the tilted balance applies here, implying anything goes. Recent case law, such as the Bewley Homes versus Secretary of State 2024 case, confirms it does not, especially when harm from coalescence outweighs the limited economic benefit of additional housing. In such cases, the tilted balance is disapplied. It's clear, residents, the parish council, and neighbouring councils do not oppose housing on this site. They simply object to excessive overdevelopment. and especially inside the entrance and along the main road. This squeezes it too close to the town's edge at Sleep Meadow and the spires. The result, coalescence, and establishing it as firmly as a new part of St Ives. We know our area well and have voiced this consistent concern for years, but even both of the professional landscape assessors who have submitted reports agree this development will be seen as part of St Ives. Adding too many homes also brings unintended consequences, such as a loss of the village identity and its character, provision of organised sports space to relieve constraints elsewhere in the village, and of course, inappropriate housing density. We shouldn't be comparing this site with nearby town scale densities. It's an edge of village setting linked to phase 1 at the heart, which is only half of the proposed density. Finally, following last month's DMC discussion about peer review, there's an understandable anxiety about avoiding an appeal at all costs. Yet it's uncertain that the developer would appeal just 32 houses, particularly when knowing the parish council and others would support an amended scheme. But if they did, a strong planning defence already exists for you, provided by our solicitors. I would argue the far greater risk is a judicial review by the parish council. They've done this before, over this very site, costing the district around £100,000. Their council minutes confirm they remain very determined and have already set aside funds to do so again if necessary. Thank you, and I'd be happy to clarify any of these points if required.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for this particular speaker? Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you for coming before us this evening. I just wonder, initially, as possibly I missed it at the beginning, but wonder if I could give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and specifically clarify in which capacity you're speaking up. I'm conscious you made reference to our solicitors at the end there. I wonder if it was that a reference to parish council, which not unreasonable if you're a resident of the parish area, but just wanted to give you an opportunity to clarify, please.
Thank you, Councillor Wakeford. Yes, I'm Paul Boothman. So, most of you, I think, know me. I'm a resident of Houghton and Witton, and I'm speaking on behalf of the residents of Houghton and Witton. When I say our, it's because we are a very tight community. Everything that happens in the village, everybody knows about, cares about generally, and supports. And that's why I'm speaking in that capacity. But thank you for asking.
Thank you. Yes, no criticism implied. Just keen for the record that we're clear. Other question I would be grateful to ask, Chair, is rather similar to the point Councillor Sanderson picked up from I think the initial speaker and objection, just around the use of language around disengagement of the tilted balance. I think the clarification Councillor Sanderson has elicited a little earlier, and so I wonder if it's also the case that what you meant was disengagement, not to mean that the tilted balance isn't the relevant threshold, but simply to mean that you think this doesn't get over even the tilted threshold as opposed to the ordinary one. I suspect it's just a point of language, but just to be really clear whether there's a suggestion to us that the tilted balance isn't the appropriate threshold, that it doesn't apply, or simply that it does apply, but the argument is even with that higher bar, this application doesn't, the objection doesn't get over it.
I think it's probably worth just very briefly mentioning the case that I referred to, the Bewley case. It is recent. There, the inspector's judgment was basically that coalition would basically lead to harm, significant planning harm. Exactly the same case as ours. It happened to be 140 houses, not 120, and it was a gap situation between two settlements. There, basically, he was saying that because that harm was so significant, because the identity and character of the settlements would be lost forever, that overcame the application of a tilted balance within the within the review of the whole case. And I think, just very briefly to say, if you live in St Ives and you walk out the door in St Ives, you see cafes, restaurants, night entertainment, shops, supermarkets, all the services that you like, an urban landscape. It's a pretty one and we love it. Walk out of our village, we've got 2 tea rooms at the moment, 1 pub, and walks. We don't have a lot else. And it's a very rural setting. And the contrast, which I think the solicitor at the beginning was trying to make, is stark. But you know which one will dominate if we do connect. It is the town. The town is bigger, it's more impactful and powerful, and it will always overcome the character of anything else once we're connected. And that's what we're trying to preserve, because of all that harm that comes with it. And that's what the Bewley case that I mentioned delivered for this particular site.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you, Chair. So I think similar to the question Councillor Sanderson had answered earlier, that is to say that that there's no suggestion that it's inaccurate what's been put to us, that the tilted balance is the relevant decision-making threshold. It's simply an argument that it's capable of causing sufficiently serious harm that it overcomes it. Yeah, and I see you nodding, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wakeford. So thank you very much for joining us this evening. We'll move on to our next speaker, which is the agent, who is Jim Strike. Welcome. You have 3 minutes in which to address the committee. When you're ready, if you want to just press the middle button, the light should go green, and then the top of your microphone should go red.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak again in support of this application. I'm the agent acting on behalf of Homes England. Homes England acquired Houghton Grange to deliver new homes to meet pressing local need, including the need for affordable properties. The Phase 2 application is a natural progression of the successful Phase 1, where Shelbourne Estates are building 100 new homes. The Phase 2 proposals have been developed through engagement with the local planning authority, county council, parish and town councils, other stakeholders and the local community. The proposals strike a balance between making efficient use of land to deliver high quality new homes, while sensitively responding to the character of the site and its setting. The proposals are design-led. The housing area is just under 4 hectares, less than 1/5 of the total site area. Housing densities in this area will average just over 31 dwellings per hectare, which is actually less than the surrounding developments, with the exception of Houghton Grange Phase 1. The location and extent of the housing has been very carefully designed to minimise the townscape and landscape impact. Our illustrative master plan shows one way in which up to 120 homes could be delivered within this fixed housing area. Some representations have made reference to 88 homes being acceptable a number on this site, but there is no policy basis for this. Nothing in Policy SI1 apportions the allocated number of dwellings across the various parts of the allocation. For the application site, there is therefore no allocation of 88 dwellings. There's no existing permission for 88 dwellings, and nor is there any application before the authority for 88 dwellings. As well as up to 120 new homes and up to 48 affordable homes, over 17 hectares of newly accessible public green space will be provided, offering substantial recreational opportunities and considerable scope for wildlife enhancement along the river valley. Attractive and convenient off-road pedestrian and cycle connections will be provided, linking to existing communities and wider networks. A substantial area of green space will be retained on the eastern side of the site, providing a meaningful break between neighbouring developments. The proposals accord with the development plan and take account of the relevant policies of the local plan, neighbourhood plan and supplementary planning policy. Specifically, the proposals comply with strategic allocation SI1. This proposal represents responsible plan-led development that meets policy requirements and delivers lasting benefits for existing communities and future residents. I respectfully ask the committee to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of clarification for this particular speaker? Councillor Mockball.
Thanks for joining us this evening. Having heard all the speakers tonight, and especially the parish who have said that they've contacted you many times to discuss an appropriate development that would suit both needs, why is it that you haven't engaged in that conversation to to come together and make a plan that suits both of your needs.
We certainly, Homes England has had a number of meetings with the parish council and have attempted to reach an agreement around a set figure. I think sort of from a personal, and I don't really want to speak on behalf of Homes England too much, but I think the important point is about making efficient use of land. And I think that the feeling that we had from the meetings that we did have was that the parish council was fairly fixed on this 88 homes number, which, you know, as I've said in the speech, has no basis for policy, and therefore effectively we weren't able to come to an agreement around a figure because of that sort of set perspective, focusing on the 88 dwellings.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone that wishes to ask a question of clarification? There are no other questions of clarification for you, so thank you very much for joining us this evening. Before we move on to questions of clarification for our planning officer, I would just bring in James, our planning officer, to update us.
Thank you, Chair. And members, simply for the avoidance of doubt, you are looking at this application afresh this evening. You are not bound by the way that you looked at it last time, and you can come to a completely different decision if you feel that your current understanding of what is proposed leads you to do so. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Are there any questions of clarification for our planning officer? Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, and thank you for the paperwork. Sorry. Yes, a lot has been made of the neighbourhood plans, and I was wondering what weight and where do they stand regarding planning applications of this sort, because there's been mention of them throughout the report and also tonight by the speakers. So I think for clarification, it'd be helpful to know how much weight is given to them and where they stand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and through you, Chair. It may be easiest if I simply direct you to paragraph 729 of the original report. That's page 81 of your agenda pack. And if there's any further questions, please, of course, do come back.
Are there any other questions? So, Councillor Mockbull.
Thank you. My question is on the effect that this application has on the Bridgham Furrow, the non-designated heritage asset.
Is that with this particular application? Which page number are you looking at?
So on the plan, can you just make that bigger? What part of the development is inside the conservation area? Yeah, so when it comes to tilted balance, you had a list where it said that there was a harm for the non-designated heritage asset, ridge and furrow. Do you want to bring that slide back up, the one with the balance?
So that's in paragraph 7.153. And the following point as well, 7.154.
Could I just get like a verbal?
You can do. Just bear with me, Councillor Mockball, a few words. Okay, I can only give you a very general answer, I'm afraid, in that at 7153, it says that the ridge and furrow would be likely to be affected by the development. That would lead me to believe that it exists where built form is currently proposed. If built form weren't to be proposed there, then the ridge and furrow would not be affected.
Sorry, my second question would be, if the ridge and the furrow has a negative impact, then how would that disengage tilted balance?
Thank you, through you, Chair. If I can direct us to 7388 on page 155 of your agenda pack, hopefully that will answer your question.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat what page you said and what
So
number?
it's page 155 and it's paragraph 7.388, which effectively approaches it and explains how the balance was formed by the officer and the opinion. Effectively, in terms of the balance, it's that last few sentences that it's not saying there wouldn't be any harm created by the proposal. However, both the individual and cumulative impact of the actual application itself will be outweighed by the public benefits of the development coming forward. So in that balance, that tilted balance, in the weighing of the actual scheme, the assessment of the scheme, that whilst there is harm, the benefits of the scheme coming forward and all those benefits contained there in the contributions and so forth, the adding towards the housing supply, that weighs heavily against the impact that this proposal would cause on that ridge and furrow.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. I think this may have already partly been answered, and that paragraph 7.29. But there's been a lot of talk this evening about disengagement from the local plan. That's a very vague term to me, and I'm not certain it's something we could even actually do. Some suggestion that we could, if the harm greatly outweighs the benefits, which from the report actually argues the other way. So just wondered if we could have a little bit of clarity on that. My second question is the separation issue. Again, just a little clarity on the separations. We've heard different measurements at different points. So I wonder if we could just bring that out of the in the debate a little bit. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, through you, Chair. Just if you mentioned about paragraph the 7.29, that effectively covers the point that I think was raised about the when you're comparing and contrasting the overlapping elements between a local plan and a neighbourhood plan. And effectively the neighbourhood plan was made in advance of the local plan being adopted. Therefore, it's quite clear, the government guidance is quite clear that if a local plan then comes after a neighbourhood plan is adopted, or comes after the fact, as it says in that paragraph here, that unfortunately no weight or significantly reduced weight is applied to both those policies that are mentioned within the neighbourhood plan.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, so Councillor Sanderson, if you just take a look at the screen there, we can see these separation distances are annotated on the proposed structural green space on the eastern flank of the development area.
Thank you. I can see that. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pitt.
Thank you, Chair. So apologies, so there's a little bit of overlap possibly with the questions. So picking up on a couple of points. So on coalescence and the density, so that seems to be one of the things that's kind of brought this back here this evening. So paragraph 3.3 talks about 120 dwellings, and effectively if we're giving outline with reserved matters for 120, the advice now is that is acknowledging that the site will accommodate 120 homes. The question of how is to be, resolved at reserved matters, but it's not the if. That seems to be the current advice. And I guess from that, I'm keen to understand, so in the breakdown of benefits and harms that was presented to us very helpfully on a single page by officers, do they see the issue of coalescence as being a harm, but a less than substantial harm, or what's the officer's diagnosis of that particular issue? And sorry, Chair, if I may, and also just in terms of density of housing, I think that some of the speakers made a good point around, edge of village density. I would personally normally expect that to be a lower density, and so a comment from the officers on that point as well would be really appreciated.
Yeah. Could we have clarification on the density of outside of a village and outside of a town?
Thank you, Chair, and through you, Councillor Pitt. So if I can direct you in respect of the coalescence query to page 155 of your report pack and to paragraph 7.389. And I'll pause there. –
'Are there any other questions? Oh, okay.
Sorry, Chair. And then in terms then, Councillor Pitt, of your density question, again, if I can direct you to your report pack, page 93, paragraph 7.83. Uh, 7.83 on page 93.
I think if I can just come back through you, Chair, what may well just set it into context for you, Councillor Pitt, is that paragraph continues over to page 94. And those last few sentences just sum it up on page 94, top of page 94.
Could you just read those out then for us? Because I think when we're asking questions, I think it's helpful if we have an oral clarification rather than us just sit here and try to run through pages, which I'm afraid my pages are muddled up. So I'm trying to find the page. So it would be helpful from my point of view, sitting on the panel, if we could just have an oral clarification for it.
Thank you.
Absolutely, and apologies. So the average density on phase 1 Knights Way, which is David Wilson Homes at the Spies, is 36.7 dwellings per hectare, with the average density on phase 2, which is Barrett Homes, being 32.3 dwellings per hectare. So that gives an average density of 34 dwellings per hectare at the Spires.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Wakeford.
I'm so sorry. Just for completeness, as we were also directed to paragraph 7.83 and the final sentences of it, I just wonder, in answer to Councillor Jordan's question, is it, just for avoidance of doubt, helpful to read some of 7.83 as well?
Thank you, Councillor Wakeford, and through you, Chair. I think I might as well just read it all out. It's probably the easiest thing, isn't it? So in addition, when calculating the density of other developments in the immediate area, calculated with the inclusion of development roads but not public open space to ensure consistency, the average density of the Sleep Meadow estate to the north of Hooton Road is 39.4 dwellings per hectare. The dwellings backing onto Hooton Road on phase 1 of Hooton Grange have an average density of 16 dwellings per hectare, with the average density of the development east of Lime Tree Avenue, 73 plots of 26.7 dwellings per hectare. It should be noted, however, that the site constraints of phase 1 Hooton Grange are unique, with the existing landscape features, trees and listed buildings which the development layout successfully responds to, and as such the average density is lower than might be typically found on new build developments in both village and town environments.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Mockball.
So when we talk about density, why, if this planning application is in Houghton and Witton, why are we talking about density in St Ives? Why are we not talking about the density of homes in the village? Because what you're doing is you're quoting urban statistics when you should be doing rural.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, it's the immediate context figures which are given, so it's the surrounding pattern and form of development.
Could you clarify whether, so I think we've got our, the lady that did our land visual assessment, and she outlined in the report that she was using the edge as being St Ives and didn't believe it was a village location. Is that right? With the coalition?
Thank you, Chair. I believe we have Michelle Bolger, our landscape consultant, on the line.
Not at the moment. Oh, we can hear you now, yes. So can I just clarify, so are you saying that this is not the edge of the village, it's actually part of St Ives? Is that what you're saying? Thank you very much. Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. I wonder if it's helpful to clarify, I suppose, the elements of the officer advice on this point that are informed by the perception of the two settlements on the ground, as opposed to the advice that's primarily predicated on the local plan policy SI1, which, as has been flagged, provides for approximately 400 homes, and then the 10% tolerance discussed in the report in, is it D8 higher up, of that 400 figure, it places that in the area as St Ives West. So to what extent is the advice about, I suppose, how it feels on the ground, as opposed to the fact that the local plan does clearly allocate this site within the St Ives West portion?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it is an experiential judgment which carries weight in the planning balance.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of clarification for our planning officer? Councillor Mockball.
I asked earlier about the conservation area, but I didn't get an answer. I said, what part of the development falls within the conservation area for both St Ives and Houghton?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, so Councillor Muckball, I'm hoping that you can make out that hatched plan on which the conservation areas are hatched in sort of left diagonals.
I couldn't. Do you mind just using your mouse just to indicate on the screen?
Does that show? There we go. So just to explain the hatching then, so this sort of T-shirt shape, if you like, is the county wildlife site. Everything to the north of that is conservation area. And then everything to the south of the site here is also conservation area. So it very much skirts around.
Are we able to make the map bigger on the screen? Would you mind going through that again for us? Thank you.
Yes, of course, Chair. So again, starting with the... Oh, I haven't got mouse anymore. So starting with the T-shirt shaped... Ah, there we go. Thank you. So starting with this T-shirt shape here, that is the county wildlife site. And then conservation areas run to the north here and across towards Hooton and Witten, and then all the way across the south here, including the green space adjacent to the river.
So does the Ridge and Furrow fall in the conservation area?
I don't know. I'm afraid I can review the file and come back to you if Chair would minded to grant a deferral, but I would need to refer back to the file.
Okay. I don't mind if you look at it and then answer me later when we're like, in the deliberation.
If that's okay, Councillor Bockpole, leave that with me, thank you.
Are there any other questions? No, there are no other questions. Are you happy to wait? Or we
I'm
can
happy to
start
move on to the debate while we wait for that answer.
So we'll move on to the discussion and then
possible.
bring that in. Okay. Okay, so we will move on to the debate. Those of you who wish to speak, please indicate if you would like to speak. Who would like to start for me? Councillor Wakeford, would you start for me? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I think it is, we may have been here and looked at this on a previous occasion, but as officers have underlined quite rightly, it is for us to be looking at this completely afresh this evening, as I am, and I'm sure we are. And it's obviously helpful to be refreshed and talked through in the way that has been done. I think in terms of the specific reason why we're here this evening as set out by the PAC, I personally find the clarification in section 3 of the additional covering report, both helpful but reassuringly very much in line with my sort of fundamental understanding of how outline permission does work, and indeed what we had been previously explained. So the quantum of development is set by the outline permission. I think a point that it's probably helpful for us to start with this evening, colleagues, is the fact that we have a local plan allocation of approximately 400 homes with a 10% tolerance that goes beyond this outline figure for this element of the site that's proposed. That is in policy SI1 in the local plan that, as we've been, I think, helpfully reminded this evening, talking through the sequence of events, both postdates the neighbourhood plan, so the neighbourhood plans, while relevant, need to be considered in that context. And I think the clarification or the argumentation we've had put to us this evening around tilted balance, I think we've reached a clear conclusion eventually that there isn't any difference of view about the fact that a tilted balance is the relevant threshold for us this evening. I think that's been clarified as well. So for me, a key question really is, in view of the fact we're in tilted balance and in view of the fact that we have a local plan allocating a quantum of housing that this proposal is in excess of, allocating a number of homes in excess of which is proposed in this application. The question really is then, okay, in that starting point, on what elements are the harms so significant that they outweigh the tilted balance. I've heard discussion this evening about the barrier between the two settlements, Houghton and St Ives, and I think it's helpful to hear that articulated verbally as well as we will be familiar and as we've read from the pack. But I suppose I am struggling to understand the argument of harm to be compatible with the planning policy that we have in front of us around the quantum of houses on the site. So in other words, I hear that there is a wish to preserve the barrier, and were there to be an application in front of us for fewer homes, that might be better at maintaining the barrier. As we've established this evening, there isn't, and we are obliged to consider the application before us. So for those reasons, colleagues, certainly where my mind is currently at, but my mind remains open and I'm looking forward to hearing contributions from colleagues, is that I'm struggling to understand how the argument for the harm caused by the reduction of the gap, or indeed any of the other objections discussed in the pack or alluded to by the speakers, it gets close to outweighing the tilt, especially that we have to consider. So that's where I am, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for starting us off. So, Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I think the standard of contributions from all our speakers has been very good. Whether you agree or not, they speak very passionately, take great pride in their village, which Houghton and Witton is a lovely village. But I think this paragraph 7.29 is key to me, and I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Wakeford's sort of early comments here. The tilted balance, whether we like it or not, is going to outweigh the neighbourhood plan, and the local plan policies will take precedence here. And I think that is pretty unavoidable here. I was puzzled by one of the speakers who sort of seemed to indicate that the village will be consumed by St Ives because Houghton has, one shop, I think a couple of tea rooms, pubs, etc., a couple of pubs. There is a very active nighttime economy in St Ives, a very active daytime economy in St Ives, but that is towards the town centre, isn't it? If you're living in Highleys or Greenleys, which is the side of town nearest here, you're not going to be consumed by that character of the town. So my first thoughts here are that we approve the application on what I've heard and seen tonight and read in the report. Thank you.
Is that a proposal?
If you're taking proposals, I will make that a proposal. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, I'll take that as a proposal. Who would wish to speak next? Councillor Mockball.
This is a really difficult one for me. I'm quite disappointed that the highways officer isn't here because I've got a few questions for the highways, but I'm not sure if any of our planning officers can highlight a couple of things for me. One is, do you have figures on all the the accidents or incidents or fatalities that have happened on that road, on like just after that junction in the past year? Because I don't think I saw it in any report, because I've seen that whole estate, what is it called, Garner Drive Estate, not being able to leave their homes because of accidents that have happened, that have closed that whole road down. And, they're sat in their homes for hours. And I just don't see a reflection of that. If that incident had happened, then that new estate would also be locked down. It does describe a lot. in the report about how you're promoting like active travel and, you know, not necessarily using cars. But I don't believe to be that far out of St Ives and not rely on a car, especially because we have the sunniest weather in England. I don't see how we should be pushing active travel on future residents when there isn't a good bus network. You can barely get out of St Ives on peak time, so I don't see how sustainable that this location is for 120, up to 120 homes. But like I said, Highways isn't here, which I'm quite disappointed with. I wasn't here in the last meeting, so I am asking questions that maybe you guys have covered already, but I wasn't here, so I'm just going to ask those questions now.
Yeah, I'll bring in our planning officers just to answer that.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm going to need to deal with these questions in the order they're delivered, I'm afraid. So I've found the section about the ridge and furrow, which I'm going to read out now for members. So ridge and furrow is in sections A30, A31 and A39, which I've made a note of. You don't need to remember that, but I'll need to come back to them. So the applicant's heritage statement says, based upon prior archaeological evaluation, magnetometer survey and aerial photography, it is highly likely that medieval ridge and furrow will be impacted by any intrusive construction works associated with the proposed development. The medieval ridge and furrow is considered to hold local significance based on its archaeological and historical interest. It is very degraded, with much of it already ploughed flat and only discernible via geophysical surveys and therefore of limited heritage value. The ridge and furrow will be truncated or partially removed by the proposed development. The level of harm associated with the truncation or partial removal of the ridge and furrow at A30, A31 and A39, I'll come back and tell you where those are in a second, will be substantial as part of the ridge and furrow will be lost or disturbed, but it is noted that these assets are of local importance only and are very degraded, and that there are much better examples surviving as earthworks in the West A34 and Southwest A34, A35, so outside the proposed development's boundary. So that's the importance of the ridge and furrow, and then explaining where those three... So a little bit... I'm going to juggle mic and laptop, sorry. Okay, so of those locations, A30, A31 and A39, A31 is within the proposed residential development parcel. A39 is on the edge of one of the proposed residential development parcels. So might be open space, might be a residential development parcel. It's right on the very edge. So apologies, it took me a little time to get to it, but hopefully that helps.
No, thank you. I think that's really important information. Thank you so much.
And I'll just bring back in our senior planning officer about your next point on traffic.
Yes, through you, Chair, if I may. Just come back to your point you mentioned about the traffic information, Councillor Lockball. It was covered last time at the when the application came in front of members, but it's on page 112 of the papers, and it's paragraph 7.173. Effectively, I'll read it through to you because it's not a large paragraph. With regard to highway safety, the submitted Transportation Assessment, or TA, confirms that collision data for the surrounding highway network has been obtained from Cambridgeshire County Council. This data confirms that there have been 2 collisions in 5 years. However, this is not considered to represent a cluster, and this, in conjunction with the low severity of incidents recorded, suggests that there are no existing safety issues in the vicinity of the application site that will be exacerbated by the application proposals. So it goes from page 112 to 113.
Councillor Wakeford, I have 2 other, is that all right? And then we could come back to you if it hasn't been asked. Okay. Councillor Butler and then Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think we're going round and round a bit here. We need to move on this one. Right. It forms part of the allocated residential development, so it's passed on the 2036 allocation. The main stumbling block appears to be the matter of what the parish would accept, 88 houses to the 120 that's proposed. Looking at it, I don't think we can argue too much when you look at the density, 31.4, and there's quite a lot higher density in that area. So I've got trouble trying to look at that from. What we need to do is look at this from an inspector, an appeal inspector. You know, would you be happy to refuse this and argue it with the inspector? I don't think we could argue this because all we're arguing is about 30 homes, which okay is a lot, but when you look at the density, which he will look at, or she, that density is not out the way. The problem is, if you refuse this and look for a lower number, that will also affect the 106. So you've got roughly 2 million there. So if you reduce the houses, you're not going to get that quantity of money coming through a 106 for education, health, or whatever reasons. Obviously, it goes with numbers. So you lower the numbers, so you lower the 106. So at least, you know, if this goes through, at least you've got that 2 million that you can make use of. As far as the separation comes, as you've all been saying, it doesn't come into it basically because you've got phase one that's already there, the old Houghton Grange. This, if you like, is an infill. And it's not a bad design. I mean, there's lots of green spaces there. I mean, so, you know, I find the numbers and the design fits quite well. So, to be honest, Chairman, I don't have a great problem with this, and I'll second Councillor Sanderson's proposal to accept it. So I think we're arguing about not a lot at all, to be honest. And you know, being threatened with judicial review, well, okay, so be it. But I won't refuse this and expect me to go up against an inspector at an appeal.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butler. I'm just going to bring back in our planning officer to cover over some points that were highlighted, and then I've got a list of councillors that still wish to speak.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to come back on the point that Councillor Motwell touched upon in terms of the conservation area and so forth, and I think it's been mentioned once or twice. On page 103 of the agenda, paragraph 7.127, I'll read this paragraph, but it then goes on to fall onto a number of points, which I'll mention in a moment. But it basically reads, the application site is partly or partially located within the Houghton and Witton Conservation Area. The St Ives and Hemniford's conservation areas are located adjacent to the boundary of the application site to the south and approximately 200 metres southeast, respectively. So effectively there's three conservation areas here. I won't read out how the officers covered all those 3 points, but there are following on from that. The first one begins at the page of top of page 100, sorry, bottom of page 103. It goes through the three distinct conservation areas and how that is assessed, the proposal assessed against the setting of those conservation areas. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm grateful very much for other councillors clarifying who are much more experienced on planning than what I am. So I am very grateful, especially for the last councillor, because as you say, we do have to be able to justify this. But like the previous councillor, I think I have trouble. I have trouble with it from a resident's point of view and the harm that they feel that it will do their village or there. And it's not just Houghton and Witton, you've got St Ives Town Council against it. So I'm very, very much struggling with it, I'm afraid. You know, I can see from a planning point of view that we have to let it go through, but I can't say that I would be able to do it with a good heart. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jordan. Councillor Tevelin?
Thanks, Chair and officers. Again, I'd like to just go back to Councillor Mockball's point. I also, commuting backwards and forwards on the A1123 towards Houghton, it gets incredibly congested over there. And although you've already got the development with like David Wilson Homes and Barrett Homes already there, they are very much on the periphery of St Ives. And I can see where more development might be a benefit to build more of a community there, up with Houghton and Witton, but it is incredibly congested, and it would doesn't seem to be much in the report back around a footfall of traffic and the impact this development would have on that. And I would like to sort of question that because for me it is a concern. It gets so congested, and if you've got residents trapped in their homes, then that's not good. I can see the need for more development, especially in the sites which are key commuter links. However, I am going to have trouble in voting on this. So yes, I'm still making my mind up. But yeah, I do feel there are questions to be raised around the impact on the local community towards connecting Houghton Witton and St Ives Town, because the current developments are very much on the edge and a bit isolated. And so, yeah, I'm going to listen to further councillors' discussion on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tevelin. Councillor Corney?
Thank you, Chair. I think, you know, if you look at this application came in long before we was in tilted balance, you know, so I think that's, and I can imagine us having this conversation, you know, at this level, had it not been for tilted balance. But I think, you know, we've heard lots of comments about we can disengage tilted balance. I've read the report, I've taken the advice tonight from our officers, and I personally don't believe that, you know, that's the case. I don't think we can disengage, we just turn it off like that. So I think, you know, I can imagine it being very, very tight on this application. If you look at it, there is definitely something, you know, that's going to be built on there. You can see it all day long. You know, I think it was Councillor Butler said it's infill, and I think, you know, you look at it and it is. I think the other thing we need to take, you know, is that this is an application of up to 120. We keep saying 120. It is up to. Now, obviously, I'm not naive. The applicants are going to want to get as close to 120 as possible, but it doesn't mean that's what it's going to be at the end of the day. I think, you know, and I think there's, you know, with all matters reserved, there's, you know, I don't know, I've said this comment before on other applications, and I'm sure we said a lot again, but there's a lot of work on this to come through yet. This is, you know, all matters reserved, and yeah, the principle is there, and I completely agree with Councillor Butler. I don't think we can argue against this anyway. I think so. I'll be supporting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corney. I'll just give our legal advisor a few moments because he wants to raise something. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Just in terms of clarification, because of some points that Councillor Corney's made, members should be considering the application on the basis it is up to 120. There's nothing that suggests that it's going to be less than that, so members should go in full knowledge. This is the reason why it came back for clarification, and members endorsing because of the discussion last time, which may have caused some confusion, but members need to have mind to the supplemental report, particularly 3.3. So in granting outline planning permission, in this instance, the council would be acknowledging that the site can accommodate 120 dwellings. The quantum of development could not be further revisited and tested at reserve matters stage. So I just didn't want members to take any point from Councillor Corney's kind of summing up and just taking that away in a way that would suggest that they might have the comfort of it being less than 120.
Thank you. Councillor Mockball, you have already spoken. Are you going to raise a different point?
Yeah, I'd like to, if I can, propose that we refuse this application. I can give my list of reasons, but as a point of order, because there is already a proposal on the table, am I still allowed to? I feel like that just came in really quick. I haven't had enough time to, discuss things.
Well, if you, is that correct? So if you have a seconder, then yes, you can propose that.
So I would like to propose that we refuse this application, and I'll list why is because I'm looking at the balance, of the harm, and I'm looking specifically at the non-designated heritage asset, which is the ridge and furrow. And the fact that it's in the conservation area and the impact it also has on our heritage assets. If we bring back the screen where you show what the balance is, the reason why I talk about tilted balance is because I still believe that there is substantial harm, even though it says less than substantial, or what's the wording? It says substantial harm and less than substantial harm. I still take that as harm. Whether it's on the lower scale, it's still, for me, that's harm. And that's harm to our history. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because you can build 120 homes doesn't mean you should, and doesn't mean it reflects, the surrounding area. You have to recognize that this is a village, not a town. And I think, as is listed, the harm is listed there. It says visual landscape impacts. It says substantial harm to our heritage assets. It says substantial harm to our non-designated heritage assets. So I feel like that harm outweighs the benefit. I still can think, I know we're not assessing it on 88 homes, but I'm saying if they did go less, section 106, that would adjust. It's not like it's going to go out the window. There will still be some contribution. I don't think we should think about how much, how less we're going to get because there'll be less homes. I don't think we should take that into consideration. And because of that, I feel like that harm outweighs those benefits. And I would really be happy if members supported me in this. And I'd also be happy to take it to, what is it?
A public inquiry.
Public inquiry, if it did come to it.
Okay, I will bring in our planning officer.
Just through you, Chair, if I may. I've heard what the councillor said. I'm still struggling to write down any policy conflicts or anything mentioned. There was nothing mentioned in there about how it conflicts with the local plan. It should be noted as well, there aren't any statutory consultee objections to it either. The substantial or less than substantial harm, something has substantial harm or less than substantial harm, that's the actual measure when looking at the impact on a designated asset. Any development has a less than substantial harm on a designated asset. That's just how it's clarified. It's not the case of many, many moons ago and there was no harm to the asset and so forth. That's gone over a number of years ago. So you don't have, as it stands at this stage, as you've seen in the report, the consultee, conservation officer, council's conservation officer hasn't objected to the application. So that may make it somewhat difficult to defend a reason on those grounds. Just food for thought, but obviously what we will need is some worked up reasons for refusal based on the policy of the local plan and possibly the MPPF as well as to why this should be rejected.
Why are those points listed if they don't demonstrate why that you know, if the application should be refused, why those reasons wouldn't upstand.
How it's set out there, the scale effectively is just showing that, as officers have recommended within the report, that the benefits of this particular proposal, or any of the proposals, tend to have this graphic on the number of applications. What the benefits of the scheme, it identifies what the harm is of the scheme, and what the officers in front of members for consideration believe the balance should be, i.e. the benefits in this particular case outweigh the harms that are being created. Now, if members want to form a contrary view to that, that's fine, but obviously that needs to be gauged in policy, and it does make it somewhat difficult if you don't have consultees that have actually shared that opinion, i.e. recommend refusal.
What if you feel let down by the consultees, like, for example, Highways, who have said there's only been 2 incidents on that road, but I live in St Ives and I know there's been more. So how do we sort of blindly follow what they're saying when I personally know different?
Well, they're the highway engineers, so the highway professionals. All they've reported to us is the reported incidents. There could have been less, sorry, there could have been more, considerably more than that. But the reported incidents are all they base their information on, and that is data that they hold. So, I mean, I can't speak to what data they hold, but that is information that we provided as the district council to base the recommendation on.
I also feel really uncomfortable when, sorry, I forgot her name online. Is that our
Michelle,
conservation?
No, that's the landscape officer that we engaged.
Yeah. I don't like the way this development has been described as being part of St Ives, and that, you know, you can't recognise when you're leaving St Ives and joining Houghton. I find that really disrespectful to Houghton.
Okay.
And I feel really let down by it. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mockball. So you have proposed to refuse. If there's anyone that wants to second or wants to make a comment, then we can go to those comments, and then we will move to the proposal that's first on the table. So Councillor Tevlin, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not making a second. I just want to raise a comment again about highways and the data. My concern again is all around congestion and the incidents that have happened. And so it's saying that they used 2011 census data, and that's a long time ago now. You know, it's 16 years ago. So they're using. I mean, I know this is on the basis for many officer reports and using the data, but that is old data. That's pre the new developments coming in. So I do want to just flag that. Thank you.
Councillor Jordan, do you have a new point to add?
Well, just to say, I would love to second it, but I do believe that we have not got any policies to back up if it was to go to appeal or to a jurisdiction, you know. And I agree with what Councillor Tevlin has just said. I picked up, I thought, on the last meeting, that it was very old data. It's not, you know, new, it's not considered up to date when you think about it. But I can't think of a policy that we can help to hold it up as much as perhaps I do feel very much that, and I can see how residents feel they're let down, but we have to go with policy, which is very hard, I think, for us all when we're sitting on here and we perhaps want to take a different point of view. So, yeah, sorry.
Okay, Councillor Sanderson, do you have a new point to raise?
I do, Chair. I have 2 points. The first one is, if this were refused on the basis of highway concerns, the first question the inspector would ask us is, how did you come to that opinion? On what basis? What did your highway authorities say, your local highway authority say? And the highway authority here are clear that there are no reasons to decline this application. My second point is, we do have a proposal and seconder on the table to approve. We've had a proposal, but I don't think we've had a seconder. So, Chair, if you're content, I would suggest that we go to the vote. Thank you.
Last one, so Councillor Wakeford, and then we will vote. No, it wasn't. So, Councillor Clark.
Yes, well, you do have a seconder, because I shall second it. And I want to bring back planners here, not planners, but the members. It's not long ago, between Yaxley and Peterborough, there was quite a big field up for development. And it was turned down because they clearly wanted a division between Yaxley and Peterborough. Just that. And it went through. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I will bring in our senior planning officer.
Yes, through you, Chair. Obviously, I've heard what Councillor Clark has to say, but I'm still go back to the original question. We do not have any reasons for refusal at this stage. I've heard nothing that is substantiated against the local plan policy. No, that wasn't a reason, Councillor. It wasn't a reason.
Just give a reason.
What policy? What national policy? What local plan policy? Unfortunately, you do need that, I'm afraid.
Okay, so what we will do now is we will move on to the vote of the first proposal. If that then fails, then we will have to go back to the next proposal, and then we would have to look at policies. So we will move on to the proposal, and the proposal that was given by Councillor Sanderson and seconded by Councillor Butler was the recommendation of powers delegated to the Head of Planning, Infrastructure and Public Protection to approve, subject to conditions and completions of a Section 106 obligation, or refuse in the event that the obligation referred to above has not been completed and the applicant is unwilling to agree to an extended period for determination, or on the grounds that the applicant is unwilling to complete the obligation necessary to make the development acceptable. All those that are in favour of approval, please raise your hand.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
And those against?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And any abstentions? There are no abstentions, so that has been approved. So we will move on to, oh no, there is no other item. So that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you everybody that has come along to listen, and thank you very much to our councillors for their contribution. Good evening.